Well, I just finished uploading my hour-long analysis of urban grazing and came over to this side of the creek that I haven't been to in several weeks. And what do you know? The goats have been here. And the first thing I'm noticing is that the creek side was grazed first, and across the way there's this batch of invasive weeds untouched. My video is too long and thorough for most of you to watch, so maybe I can do a summary as I walk through the recent aftermath of the goat grazing here. The invasive seeds are still right here laying on the ground, ready for the next round of germination. Now let's look at the native plant situation. As a nature lover, I sympathize with the wildlife that are here that have to contend with a herd of four-legged locusts coming through and eating everything that was desirable. I'm not going to be able to identify all of these since the tops are chewed off, but I will say some of them are going to be non-native plants in here. But point being that the local animals are still going to be looking for green things that have nutritional value to eat, and those are the first things that the goats eat. Now over here, this is without question an interior live oak that has been removed of all of its leaves. That's definitely native. As I stand up and look around, you can see that anything within the reach of the goats when they get on their hind legs has also been stripped bare. Now here's what really upsets me. The use of goats means that they get to areas that machinery and humans often won't go to, and that is portrayed as a good thing. It does solve a problem if your problem is that you want to get to hard to reach places, but it's also a negative because now the goats have distributed the seeds that they are carrying in their poop and in their fur and in their hooves down to even more habitat. In other words, they just spread the problem further. My concern about seed distribution isn't just a theory, it's contained in research papers about this topic, and seeing this poop right down here in the creek bed, this confirms that the goats have been here and the goats have dropped seeds here. Look at this. In the long video, I talk about the importance of bark protecting trees, particularly from fire, and that's how trees manage to survive fire when everything else burns. These poor things have been absolutely stripped bare. Not only have the branches been chewed on and chewed off and the leaves removed, but the bark is gone. If the goat grazing program included a line that said that the goal was to kill young oak trees, then they could actually say that they're accomplishing a goal. You know how I know that the goal isn't to kill the oak trees? The Park Service is going through great lengths to desperately try and get new ones to grow. In the meantime, the goats are killing the ones that are already doing that on their own. You can see they aren't exactly gentle, are they? A couple of leaves left up at the top where the goats couldn't get to. I don't know what to make of this. How they just leave entire random sections of it like this stuff. But all around it, same thing except on the ground. If you're ever wondering how to tell whether or not it was mowed or whether it was goats, well, you'll see random tall sections, which usually doesn't happen with mowing, and poop. And if you want to know if it's wildlife poop or goat poop, well, wildlife don't leave an entire blanket of poop across the entire expanse. Goat poop. Seeds of the invasive plants next to the goat poop. Tall fire fuel of invasive plants right next to the goat poop. One of the escape routes that these urban grazing programs use is to tell the public that it is a multi-year process, a multi-year program. Go ahead and tell me, this is serious, I would like you to try and formulate an explanation as to how, where agricultural animals, domesticated animals came through and trampled, ate what they wanted, primarily the tasty native plants, left behind the invasive plants, reseeded the ground, and also left the seed behind in their poop. How is this spot next year going to be better than this year? How is doing this again going to be better 2 years from now, 3 years from now? Here we go. I'm back down to the creek's edge, which is almost entirely dry. Got the telltale signs with the goat poop. Plants stripped, basically bare, protective outer layer of the plant removed. But they had a great time chowing down these aquatic reed plants, whatever these used to be. Again, I have to think about the native grazers. It's not a stretch of the imagination to think that if the goats will eat this, then maybe the native grazers would have found something beneficial out of it. And I don't know how many deer actually manage to live around here, but isn't it interesting that if there was an increase in the number of deer to forage and reduce biofuel, that people that like to hunt or aren't used to seeing wildlife would say, oh, there's an explosion in the deer population, we got a open hunting season. We're not okay with seeing a lot of wildlife, but we don't have a problem with unleashing 400 goats. Actually, I can demonstrate with these larger plants. They make it a little easier to understand the problem, that next to where some of them were eaten and only eaten to there, let's pretend that this is an invasive plant that we want to get rid of. Well, you only ate some of it, and the vast majority of it got trampled and is laying on the ground. Look at that. Look how much is actually still here. Here's a nice little example of a massacre. Oh, look at this poor young tree. And I've actually seen this happen, and I know I wasn't here to witness it, but I've seen it other times. You can see an example in my longer video that the goats actually will lay on these things with their weight in order to knock them down and make them more edible. So this thing not only got stripped, but it got cracked right at the base. All right, I start to walk up out of the creek. the creek's edge, we had some desirable things to eat that the goats took out first, and in the distance I see all the target plants that we needed to get rid of still here. Okay, for this question, and I really do want you to answer this, at least in your head, when you read about wildfires jumping across highways or even getting across fire barriers, what makes you think that if an ember blows into this field, that this stuff laying on the ground isn't going to catch fire? You think it has to be like this to catch fire? In fact, if I were to bring a lighter out here and try to start a fire, I would probably go down to these bunches of loose stuff laying on the ground rather than come up here. Either way, as you can see, there's still plenty of the tall stuff left behind. Look at this cluster that the goats left behind. Quite the representation of my most hated invasive plants. Got these wild oats. You have yellow star thistle right here. Crack. Gee, that's not dry and ready to burn. You got your ripgut brome. Sorry, I've got multiple plants there. Who did I miss? I bet there's at least one more in here. Trying to use mowing to solve this issue has similar problems that the goats have, in that just like the goats leaving most of the plant laying on the ground and letting the seeds drop to the ground, mowing does the same thing. They leave the plant that they supposedly want to get rid of laying on the ground. Just plain stupid. Another note on the biofuel, and I included the visual experimentation in the long video. I took home some of this goat manure to see if it would burn, and it burns just fine. And another note, you know, as I just complained about the noise pollution of the leaf blowers that we so desperately want to get rid of, then we replace those leaves with tan bark, wood chips. I brought those home. Guess what? They burn. Crazy. Wood burning. As I examine these plants that have been stripped bare down at the edge of the creek, I have come across the goat fence.